During the heart of Greece's most famous mythology, Odysseus is born to his parents Laertes and Anticlea. His father is a former Argonaut, having aided Jason on his quest for the Golden Fleece, as well as hunting the Caledonian boar. Laertes is the king of Ithaca and its surrounding islands, making Odysseus Ithaca's heir. In his adolescence, Odysseus visits his grandfather and joins in on a boar hunt. Despite his inexperience, he entered the hunt with enthusiasm, killing a boar of his own in exchange for receiving a deep scar on his leg. Such setbacks do nothing to best his unyielding will, and he grows up to become a man of great renown. He is equal parts warrior and strategist, believing that knowledge, patience, reason, decisiveness, love, and hope are the key to victory. As an adult, he becomes one of many suitors hoping to marry Helen, thought to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, however, since Odysseus finds himself more in love with Helen's cousin, Penelope. Odysseus can see in Penelope an inner beauty, something he loves but cannot quite describe. At the same time, he doesn't expect Helen to pick him over the other suitors anyway. Of these men, Helen appears to be most enamored with King Menelaus of Sparta. Thus, while tension rises among the suitors, Odysseus finds a way to ease that tension. He consults Tyndareus, Helen's matchmaker, and proposes a solution. His idea is a sworn oath between the suitors that, no matter whom Helen chooses, they will all support the couple. The suitors agree, pledging to respect Helen's decision, and in the end, she does indeed pick Menelaus. In exchange for solving the feud, Tyndareus helps Odysseus win Penelope's affections. With Penelope as his bride, Odysseus returns to Ithaca, anticipating a life of peaceful matrimony. Initially, this is exactly what happens. The two bear a child, Telemachus, but just as the baby turns 1 year old, Odysseus' vow comes back to haunt him. Paris abducts Menelaus' wife Helen, bringing her back to Troy, sparking the Trojan War. Menelaus, calling upon the oath, asks all of Helen's former suitors to join him on a quest to rescue her. Certainly, Odysseus is skilled and brave, normally ready and willing to fight for an ally. This time, however, he is reluctant after a seer informs him that, should he go to war, he will not return home for many years. Wanting to stay with his wife and young child, Odysseus tries to avoid war by feigning madness. This attempt fails when Palamedes, a warrior in his own right, calls Odysseus on his bluff. While Odysseus recklessly plows his fields to demonstrate his madness, Palamedes places Telemachus in the plow's path. To save his son, Odysseus is forced to reveal his sanity by changing direction. Exposed as fully capable, he is left with no choice but to join the Achaean army. Tragically, just as the prophecy foretold, he will not return home for another 20 years, during which his son grows up, his mother dies of grief, and his elderly father falls into physical decline. Despite his reluctance, Odysseus performs brilliantly for his Greek allies, offering both strategy and strength to the cause. Agamemnon, Menelaus' brother and commander of the Greek forces, tries to test his army's morale by pretending to get cold feet. This backfires, causing many soldiers to turn back. Luckily, Odysseus is able to rally the army by reminding them of another prophecy that predicts Troy will fall after 9 years. For as much as the Trojan War is a battle between humans, the gods also place heavy investment into various campaigns. Many of them, including Athena, happen to favor Odysseus, and while that makes him a tremendous asset, it is not enough to win. Everyone understands that the Achaeans must rely on help from Achilles, the immortal hero, to fight on their side. Agamemnon spoils this by offending Achilles. Instead of fighting then, Achilles remains in his tent, playing the lyre with his dear friend Patroclus. While Odysseus and 3 other men attempt to appease him, Achilles refuses to fight until Patroclus, donning his armor, is slain by the Trojan hero Hector. Until then, Odysseus carries much of the slack, slaying entire lines of Trojans on his own. He also successfully infiltrates Trojan camps as a spy, capturing and assassinating key figures thought to be critical to the war's outcome. He continues fighting bravely, even after being stabbed during an especially heated confrontation. This stoicism empowers the Achaeans, who survive the war to see Achilles avenge Patroclus. Ultimately, however, Achilles himself is killed by an arrow from Hector's brother, Paris. With each side's greatest warriors gone, the war resumes as a stalemate until Odysseus comes up with his iconic strategy, the Trojan Horse. This idea is simple yet stunning. The Greeks appear to withdraw from the Trojan shores, leaving behind a massive wooden statue of a horse. Perceived as a gift for their victory, the Trojans drag the horse inside the city and proceed to celebrate. This seals their downfall, as the horse's belly actually contains a force of Achaean soldiers ready to descend from it during the night to slaughter their defenseless enemies. Odysseus himself commands the operation, but before entering the horse, he is given a divine armament from the goddess Athena. It is Aegis, the divine body boundary field, a mechanized suit of armor resembling the gods' old machine bodies. In its purest conceptual form, it is a powerful barrier, but through Athena's blessing, it takes the shape of genuinely wearable armor. Such armor is never mentioned in written legend, such as the Iliad or the Odyssey, likely due to Athena's shyness. Not wanting future generations to know of her affection for Odysseus, she makes certain this armor is kept a secret. Still, in the coming adventures, it will save him through his most famous dangers, helping to explain how a mortal like him can achieve such feats. Thus, when the Trojans are taken by surprise as Greek soldiers pour from the horse's belly, they are terrified to see a commander wearing an iron helmet. Having drunken themselves to sleep, naively believing to have won, Troy's soldiers stand no chance against the invasion, putting an end to the decade-long war. Hoping to reunite with Penelope as soon as possible, Odysseus sets out with his fleet back to Ithaca. While gods like Athena consider Odysseus to be a valiant hero, others who supported Troy think just the opposite. Those in opposition plan to make his journey home as arduous and deadly as possible. For instance, Zeus unleashes a storm that lasts for 9 days, leading the fleet to the land of the Lotus Eaters. Natives on the island feed Odysseus' crew intoxicating fruit that lulls them into a sense of complacency. No longer wanting to return home, these men only depart the island when Odysseus drags them back to their ships and locks them up until the fruit's toxicity leaves their system. Under poor visibility, Odysseus' fleet sails to the land of the Cyclops, a dangerous place inhabited by one-eyed giants. In search of food and supplies, Odysseus and some of his men find themselves raiding a cave for its sheep, only to be imprisoned by the Cyclops Polyphemus. A massive boulder blocks the cave's exit. In a fit of gluttony, Polyphemus chugs down the wine from Odysseus' ship. While drunk, he asks Odysseus' name, to which our hero replies, "Nobody." The giant collapses, giving Odysseus and his men the chance to impale his only eye with a wooden stake. Enraged, Polyphemus screams out to his neighbors, "Nobody is killing me!" receiving a rather unenthusiastic response. Without aid, morning comes, and while he cannot see, the giant is still able to open the cave for his sheep to graze. Odysseus and his men escape by clinging to the bellies of these sheep. They steal the sheep, and once out at a safe distance from land, Odysseus reveals his true name. Polyphemus, humiliated and vengeful, cries out to his father, who just so happens to be Poseidon, god of the sea. With yet another god against him, Odysseus sails to Aeolus, the ruler of winds, for help. Aeolus gifts him a bag of wind, and even stirs up a wind meant to guide his crew home. All seems well, but just days away from Ithaca, the men suspect that Odysseus is keeping a fortune of gold and silver in the bag. Hoping to confirm their suspicion, they tear the bag open, releasing the wind inside. The stored wind carries them all the way back to Aeolus, who refuses to help them again because he believes the gods must hate Odysseus. Lacking wind, Odysseus' fleet must row to the land of the Laestrygonians, a race of giants who attempt to eat the crew. Odysseus is able to get his men back to their ships, but as they set off from land, the giants toss boulders that sink all but Odysseus' own ship. At an all-time low, Odysseus and his small crew of survivors continue sailing. When they are forced to stop for supplies, they do so on Aea Island, where a beautiful witch named Circe lives in isolation. As the self-proclaimed Queen Witch, her spells are versatile, able to heal and transform people, as well as craft poisons and prophecies. From just a single glance, Circe takes a liking to Odysseus, perceiving him as a man made of iron. Like all other intruders, Circe transforms his crew into swine. Unwilling to lose more allies, though, Odysseus draws his sword on Circe, forcing her to return them to normal. She defends herself by reasoning that his crew, exhausted from war and killing, would enjoy the peace and mind of being beasts. However, Odysseus's will, stoic as his armor, refuses such a simple way out. Instead, he insists on returning home to Ithaca. To him, it's not even a choice, but a sworn duty. Even as Circe offers him any conceivable worldly treasure, she cannot provide him the one thing he truly wants, his beloved Penelope. Met with rejection, Circe retaliates by trapping Odysseus on her island. She shares with him her peaceful lifestyle, but forbids him from leaving. Such a life has its perks, and he genuinely enjoys it. But no matter the luxury, Odysseus remains true to his need to continue his travels. This stubborn feud persists for an entire year, and enduring it presses Circe to restrict her own emotions with charms. Even under the assumption that Penelope has long since given up on him and married someone else, Odysseus vows to return home. Circe finds herself emotionally trapped in a paradox. She's fallen in love with his iron will, and yet it is that same will that prevents him from remaining by her side. The only real way she can keep him is by changing the very aspect about him that she adores. Ultimately, Circe admits defeat, granting her beloved his freedom, and even warning him of the dangers that still lie ahead. She instructs him to sail to the underworld, the realm of Hades, and speak to the spirit of a blind prophet, Tiresias. In addition, she warns him of 3 dangers. First are the sirens, whose songs lure sailors to their deaths. The songs compel victims to sail closer, and after their ships are destroyed by sharp rocks, the sirens feed on their flesh. Past the sirens is an even greater threat. Charybdis, a violent creature that creates a massive whirlpool around itself, is guaranteed to tear his ship asunder. The only way to navigate around it is to sail past the 6-headed monster Scylla, sacrificing one of his men for each of their hungry mouths. While it is cruel, Circe advises that he choose to face Scylla, as 6 men lost is better than having all of them die to Charybdis. With flowing tears and an aching heart, Circe lets Odysseus go, never truly able to convey her feelings. Despite delaying his reunion with Penelope, Odysseus carries no resentment toward Circe and dutifully follows her instructions. After luring in the souls of the dead, Odysseus speaks with Tiresias, who reminds him of Poseidon's anger. Thankfully, even with so much opposition, Tiresias assures him that he indeed will reach Ithaca. That said, the journey will take him past Thrinacia, the island of the sun god Helios. Tiresias warns him to avoid harming Helios' cattle at all costs. Bearing Tiresias' words in mind, Odysseus and his crew must still face the dangers Circe anticipated. When they near the Sirens' Island, the crew plugs their ears to drown out the sound. Yet, they don't have enough beeswax for everyone, and so Odysseus orders his men to tie him to the ship's mast. He alone is able to hear their song, but fortunately his men refuse when he begs to be released. They later reach the strait, where they must sail through Charybdis' whirlpool, or stay to the side where Scylla can reach them. Standing at the ready, Odysseus prepares lances with which to attack the 6-headed beast, but cannot react before its mouths swoop in from the darkness above and steal 6 of his bravest men. He is not chosen, and thus must bear the sin of leading his own crew through peril. Only after surviving these threats does the remaining crew reach Thrinacia. Ideally, Odysseus wishes to avoid the island entirely, but a treacherous storm leaves the crew beached for a month. Odysseus instructs his men to live only off the ship's provisions, but when these provisions run out, the men lose to temptation and begin hunting the island's cattle. Helios discovers this and asks Zeus to punish the crew. In turn, just as the crew sets sail off the island, Zeus strikes them with another storm. It rips their ship apart, and all but Odysseus himself drown beneath its waves. Clinging only to shattered timber, he endures as the storm carries him all the way back toward Charybdis. Only a single grasp of fortune allows him to escape the whirlpool and ultimately wash up on Ogygia, an island belonging to the nymph Calypso. Much like Circe, Calypso falls in love with Odysseus and holds him captive on her island. Hoping to keep Odysseus as her immortal husband, Calypso uses her singing to restrain him, this time for several years. Athena suffers, having to watch him be taken prisoner for a second time, and gathers the gods at Mount Olympus to negotiate his freedom. After her impassioned speech, Zeus decides that Odysseus has been punished enough, and has Hermes deliver a decree to Calypso to let her captive go. She is angry, complaining that male gods are free to take mortal lovers as they please, and yet here she is unable to do the same. These cries fall on deaf ears, and so Calypso submits, helping Odysseus build a new ship with which to leave her. While Zeus has forgiven Odysseus, Poseidon most certainly has not. Stirring a storm of his own, Poseidon wrecks this new ship, but has his efforts thwarted by Athena and the goddess Ino. They help Odysseus survive the storm and wash up in the kingdom of Phaeacia. He reluctantly recounts his journey to the king and queen, who show him hospitality and even arrange a new ship and crew to safely escort him to Ithaca. While they indeed get Odysseus home, they are punished for their good deed by an angry Poseidon. Ithaca is not as he once left it. During his absence, the palace had been invaded by a mob of Ithacan suitors, demanding Penelope's hand in marriage. Their intentions are not pure, however. They ultimately seek Odysseus' throne and view his son Telemachus as a threat. With Athena's help, Odysseus enters his homeland disguised as an old vagabond. In secret, he reunites with his son Telemachus, and together they plan to purge the suitors. Penelope challenges the suitors to test their skills in archery. 12 axes are arranged in a line, each with a ring at the top of their handles. Whoever can string Odysseus' bow and use it to shoot an arrow through all 12 rings in a single shot will win her hand in marriage. After Telemachus and the suitors all try and fail this task, Odysseus, still in disguise, easily strings his own bow. The arrow he fires whistles as it soars through each ring, and without a moment's hesitation, Odysseus fires a second arrow at his enemies. All the palace's exits are sealed, and Odysseus reveals his true identity. He, Telemachus, and very few of their trusted allies use weapons from the storeroom to massacre the remaining suitors. It is an absolute bloodbath. Penelope is weary of Odysseus' return, finding it hard to believe after so many years. She tests his resolve by asking a servant to move her bridal bed, the very bed he constructed from an olive tree in the courtyard. When he declares the bed unmovable, recounting how he made it and what it means to him, Penelope knows her husband has finally returned. After spending 20 years apart, the two share a blissful night together, with Athena delaying the dawn so they have more time. This moment of happiness is contrasted by the earlier massacre. Over 100 suitors lay dead, and their families desire revenge. Odysseus visits his father's orchard, proving his identity after all these years by showing the scar on his leg. While he and Laertes reconcile his absence, a small army approaches them, wanting to avenge their sons. Fighting breaks out until Athena steps in, putting an end to the violence by forcing the Ithacans to forget the massacre and recognize Odysseus as their rightful king. Many believe that Odysseus lives in wedded bliss until his death. Another famous testimony, however, asserts that he is tragically killed by his own son. This account assumes that, during his time with the witch Circe, the two conceived a child, Telegonus. As an adult, this son is sent to Ithaca to meet his father, but stops before reaching the palace to kill some sheep to eat. Odysseus confronts the man about this, not knowing of his other child, and the two fight. Telegonus stings Odysseus with a spear tipped in poison. Upon discovering his patricide, it is said that Telegonus brings both Penelope and Telemachus to Aea, where Circe grants them immortality. This story ends with the two sons marrying each other's mothers. The credibility of this account is debatable, but regardless of its truth, Odysseus' legendary status as a hero has him recorded into the throne of heroes. As a heroic spirit, he is summoned by the Counterforce to help protect humanity. One type of threat to the human order are lost belts, timelines which deviate too far from proper human history. One such lost belt exists around the islands of Atlantis, in a time when the Greek gods are able to preserve their mechanical bodies. History as we know it is threatened, and so the planet summons various servants to help dismantle the lost belt. Odysseus is among these servants, empowered by both his legends and the mechanized armor Athena gave to him. As a servant, Odysseus can fire beams of energy, fly, and strike with explosive force. His noble phantasm is Troia Hippos, colossal Trojan Horse of Obliteration. It is an extension of Aegis, in which the armor transforms into a mechanical giant. It can stand upright, viewing the world from on high, or take the shape of the legendary Trojan Horse. The power of its attacks stem directly from the devastating brutality the horse brought to Troy. Using this noble phantasm as a mount is what grants Odysseus the rider class. He and the other counter-servants form an assault team against Olympus, hoping to clear a path for when Chaldea's master, Ritzka, eventually arrives. Despite these devastating assets, this Odysseus is felled in combat against a version of himself residing in the Lost Belt. The machine gods summoned their own Odysseus, one who never fought in the Trojan War and never even met Penelope. When he defeats the Odysseus from proper human history, however, he gains knowledge of this other life. The only memory Odysseus refuses to give to his other self is that of Penelope. The Lost Belt Odysseus aids the machine gods by commanding the Atlantis Defense Forces. He controls a fleet of ships that police the island and snuff out anyone hoping to reach Olympus. Naturally, this includes the coming of Chaldea, and to prepare for their arrival, Odysseus sets out to dismantle any mana ley lines Ritzka can use to summon their own servants. Eventually, he finds the last active ley line, and before shutting it down, he summons Charlotte Corday. Charlotte is forced to serve the Olympians, and is infused with nanomachines from Zeus called Cleronomia. When Chaldea ray-shifts in with the Nautilus, Odysseus greets them with an armada of ships and demonic beasts. The Chaldeans are nearly eradicated, barely surviving from a last-minute jump to void space. Throughout the Lost Belt, Odysseus hunts them like animals, until finally facing off en route to Nemesis Island. Charlotte Corday, hoping to aid Chaldea, is nearly killed by the Zeus Cleronomia inside her. Yet, she holds true to her convictions, and is able to replace the Zeus Cleronomia with that of Athena. It grants her a form of battle continuation, keeping her alive after a fatal wound to land one more hit before fading away. Despite his ruthless tactics against Chaldea, he fails to account for Charlotte's importance, and so when he strikes her down in battle, he lets his guard down, and she has just enough stamina to land her noble phantasm, Le Rêve Ensoleillé. This wicked Odysseus, who lacks the loving memory of Penelope, underestimates the affection of his opponent and is ironically defeated by a blessing from Athena. Thankfully, Odysseus' journey continues as a heroic spirit. His summonings not only brought him up against a version of himself, but they also bring him to other familiar faces. The witch Circe, who desperately wished for his love, persists as a heroic spirit contracted with Chaldea. Hoping to bring Circe and Odysseus together once more, Circe's niece Medea takes advantage of a lull between Lost Belts to create a singularity at Aeaea Island. She then summons the Odysseus from proper human history as a rogue servant, using a spell to make him lose his memories. Thus, in order to reach Medea and resolve the singularity, Circe and Odysseus are forced to work in close proximity as a team. Together, they complete Medea's trials, traversing a recreation of Daedalus's famed labyrinth. This rekindles an old flame in Circe's heart, a part of her past she's always regretted, and surprisingly allows her to confront her feelings and move on from them. By the end, Odysseus regains his memories, and just like before, his heart belongs to Penelope. But now, it is a fact that Circe can better accept. After letting her pent-up emotions flow, she can finally say what she wanted to in life, that she wishes him a life full of happiness. Odysseus vanishes before the singularity does, leaving Circe to rely on her master for a shoulder to cry on. Life returns to normal at Chaldea, and not too long after, Odysseus is summoned as a proper servant for Ritzka. This incarnation does not remember the small singularity on Aeaea Island, so he is surprised to see Circe in such good spirits. Living with heartbreak isn't easy, but even so, the two servants shake hands as partners in the fight to protect humanity. Before I go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Freebrick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Johnny Tsunami, Link Pendrago, Bricken, Caitlin P., Vladimir Rovna, Succubus Sakura, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
Celebrate your fandom!